So now first, we must not confuse Egyptian high alchemy with what the alchemist was doing back in medieval times. Now, the alchemist was basically turning base metals into gold, lead, iron into gold, as I talked about before. Now, with Egyptian high alchemy, it's about gathering energy and sustaining that energy in order to rise in consciousness and awareness, in order to use that energy to basically raise your power level, so to speak, or, raise the strength of your physical body as well, raise in consciousness. And to give you an example, I always use Dragon Ball Z because it's full of Egyptian high alchemy. Now, when Goku and Piccolo enter the meditative state, and they are able to raise their power level, they are able to train their bodies from meditation and grow in energy and power. This is what Dragon Ball Z is alluding to, Egyptian high alchemy. It's really about reaching different levels of enlightenment, enlightenment and awareness, and, raising your energy and consciousness to achieve a full illuminated state of being, or what is known deeply in esoteric and occult circles, achieving the golden light, getting the golden light. And this is what it's really about deeply in the occult and esoteric circles, is that golden light. Now, if you remember in Dragon Ball Z, when Goku turned into a Super Saiyan, remember his hair turns gold. His aura becomes gold when he powers up. His power is gold. The Dragon Balls are gold. So this is what it's all alluding to, the golden light, and achieving this power all from, a meditative state and from different, workouts, so to speak, and raising your consciousness, your energy and awareness. And this basically is, it's almost like training in order to get the so-called, golden light. So now when you start talking about stuff like, golden lights and everything like that, people always ask, is this stuff real? If it's real, how come we haven't seen anybody reach this golden light? Or how come we haven't seen anybody come close to achieving this power? Now, a lot of times when we think about enlightenment and, reaching higher states of consciousness, a lot of people automatically go straight to the monks, to the Buddhists or what have you, because they dedicate their lives to, obtaining this high level, this enlightenment. And we haven't seen anybody come forward with this power. So the thing is, they are oppressing the only people who can, and that is us. So you got to understand, if you know that we are capable of achieving this power, and what it's really about is they are trying to hold us back long enough till they find a way to achieve it themselves. And even if they can't, they don't want us to ever achieve it. So, it's all about oppression right now. So if you understand that we have this power, what will you do? Exactly what we are seeing. They're oppressing us. And we know that they understand that we have this power. When you just go to Genesis 11, I talked about this before, it's talking about, they are one. The people are one. Now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. And Genesis 11:7 is talking about, going down there and confounding their speech and scattering them abroad so they can't achieve what they were trying to achieve. And that's, building this so-called tower or this platform or whatever to get to God. Basically how the Bible is breaking it down. But we know it's about achieving this level and becoming God. As I talked about back in the garden, you had God basically kicking us out the garden because we almost became gods. And this happens again in Genesis 11 when you see them basically becoming one anyway. After everything that happened, we still came together and, was one and had this power. And we see again, it's being taken away from us. So and the thing is, what you have to think about, what I talk to Christians about a lot, is if the Bible is supposed to be true, if it's a true story based on stuff that actually happened, who are these people? Now, we understand that it's talking about us, African people. But the question still is, it's talking about the Lord in that verse 11, 1 through 9, Genesis. And God is supposed to be all powerful, almighty God, or what have you. Why would God be so scared of a people so much that he would have to confound their speech and scatter them abroad? Why? This is supposed to be God. Didn't he create these people? So what is it about these people that God fears? Why is God fearing anything? He's supposed to know all, be all powerful, or what have you. How is he so scared of what these people are doing that he confounded their speech and basically scattered them abroad and, basically stopped them from doing what they're doing? And this is the question that you have to ask yourself. And you have to look at this metaphorically, of course, and what it's alluding to. And it's talking about us obtaining this power, and reaching our true potential. So the powers that be understand that all we need to do is unite again, to become one again, to obtain this unity, this power. And this is why they must keep the oppression going. This is why we see poverty in the black community. This is why we see black people, African people oppressed everywhere. And they have to continue the dominance and continue to keep their foot on our throats, basically. So, the thing is, we are being used to control the consciousness of, white people, of basically people around the world. And make no mistake, making a people racist, making people scared or dislike black people or African people is controlling their consciousness. You are controlling the way they feel. You are controlling their energy. So when they put out certain things and they get people to feel some type of way about African people or black people, they are controlling them with this, and they're using us to do it. So we have to understand that. So, with the whole white supremacy thing and perpetuating all this, racism and this whole racial tension that's going on, this is a major part of their plan. They have to keep us looking unequal. But at the same time, we see, one, everybody follows us. You look at white people, you look at people from around the world, they are following the so-called black culture. They are following and mimicking everything that we do. I mean, when you look at all the white rappers that are surfacing, having the balls, one, to battle rap against black people. Thank you 8 Mile for that. You can thank Eminem for that. But having the balls to do so. I mean, look at all the white people with, dreadlocks, shape-ups now, as I talked about before. All the white people dancing like us, mimicking us in so many different ways, talking like us. When you pay attention to the anchors, the news anchors, the sports anchors, using the lingo, the slang that we created, saying that, somebody tripping, that's gangster, keeping it real, all the little slang that they use to try to bring themselves into, the consciousness that's basically circulating around people who participate in things like sports and, anything that's exciting on TV. We are all a part of this culture. Anybody that indulges into this whole culture, this consciousness of partying and being popular and hip and cool, this comes from us. This all draws from us, our consciousness. And they are using us to basically drive everybody, as I said. So when you pay attention to, everybody that's following this culture that we are controlling, we are driving, really, not so much controlling, they're controlling it, but we are basically driving it, and everybody's following us, mimicking and copying exactly what we are doing. But, we always say this, how the hell can y'all be copying and mimicking us but not respect us? And the powers that be are doing a job, because if they didn't, we would basically run the world. If they didn't oppress us, we would control this country, because everybody is following us. We would control the world. So the perfect example would be Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson, I never seen so many white people pass out and faint over any other superstar or celebrity as much as Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson had these white people. He had Europeans. He had the world captivated. It was just something about him. And, the thing is, Mike wasn't a thug. He didn't push what's driving a culture today, this hip-hop culture. The hip-hop culture is driving everything today. Mike was a pop star. Mike was about peace and world peace and love and unity and everything like that. He was against the government. They don't really care about us, and against racism and everything like that. And white people accepted him. Everybody accepted him. Everybody was trying to ride that wave that Mike was on. Everybody loved what Mike was doing. They loved him. He was almost like a god. And, they couldn't have this black man, in such control of so many white people. Not just white people, but people around the world. So many people would be following his message. So they had to do exactly what they done with us. And that's basically one, the whole vitiligo thing happened. All of a sudden, we can't keep this black man black and having this power and influence over white people. He's too powerful. So they had to change his image. And anybody who doesn't understand that, one, you look at the pictures. Yeah, Michael Jackson had that big bell pepper nose. He started to break out a little bit, but then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I could understand the nose job he wanted to get done. He had that big bell pepper nose. But, you know, out of nowhere, vitiligo, he says, you know, and he said his dad says it's running the family. He hasn't seen anybody with it. Remember that interview he did with Oprah? And, you know, all of a sudden he started, you know, turning white, and it was an accelerated process. Now, a lot of people say that, oh, he just accelerated the process and made himself white or what have you. We don't really know what happened, but next thing we know, the dude white. You know, his nose is gone, his lips has changed because he didn't have the lips. He had black people nose, black people lip. He had the two distinct figures that makes him 100%, you know, unequivocally black. And you had that nose and those lips driving the world, and they just couldn't accept it. You see what they do in Kemet, chopping off the noses of the Egyptian statues. And they did the same thing to Mike. So we have to understand that they understand what we are capable of, what we can do, as I said before, which is why oppression of black people must happen and must occur. They understand the genetics of the X gene, the X genotype, and how dominant we are, you know, compared to, you know, everybody else. So, you know, again, when you look at X-Men, you know, X-Men, Xavier, Magneto. I talked about this before, how Xavier is basically Dr. King, and Magneto is Malcolm X. This is where Stan Lee got the idea from. Remember, Malcolm X was about separation, separating from the white man and everything like that. Dr. King was about unity, you know, and you have Magneto, same way, separate the mutants. Xavier, you know, unity, mutants and humans. So, you know, this is what it's alluding to when you look at X-Men and the Marvel Universe. The whole Marvel Universe was first based off ancient Egyptian gods, as I've shown before. So this is Stan Lee understanding what we are and the power that we have. And when you look at Marvel comics or Marvel anything, it is talking about African people and the power, the potential power that we possess. And it's funny that all they can do is basically make movies, you know, to fantasize about having this power and being superheroes and everything like that. We are now about to get a Black Panther movie, and we'll see how that is. But you see, I mean, it's not a coincidence, the lack of African superhero movies. We had Spawn, but this dude, you know, was in hell. You know, it had to deal with church. You know, we haven't had, you know, a serious, real, you know, black superhero. We got Hancock, who was a drunk. You know, we got Meteor Man, who was a joke. I mean, we have never had a real black movie based on, you know, our real African past. We haven't had a movie that really portrayed Africans as ancient Egyptians or portray us in our power as kings during ancient times in Africa. So we don't see this, and it's a reason why they have to show only white people and not African people, you know, in this light. Now, the ancient Egyptians talked about being able to leave the physical body and travel the heavens or the universe and their astral bodies, you know, the whole solar boat or astral boat and everything like that, and being able to come back to their physical bodies and still have, you know, memory. So something like this had to be done. And I say this because the things they knew about the universe and the planets, the formation of the planets or what have you, something like this had to be done in order for them to have this kind of knowledge. Now, I talked about in the last DVD how, you know, pyramids on Mars and everything like that. We talked about in Saturn, Satan, and Metal Netter about how the planet seems to be ready to support human life, like it was prepared to support and sustain human life. You know, we share these genes with all these animals, and we know that animals and insects play a vital role in, you know, supporting our life and keeping us here, sustaining human life. So, you know, we have to look at this and we have to understand, you know, what this is all about. Now, I talked about before how, you know, we exist in a part of the universe that supports and sustains matter and energy. You know, and when you look at it, we know we got all this dark matter out there that, you know, scientists don't understand, they don't get into. But as far as we can see, this is basically part of the universe that supports and sustains matter and energy. And the reason why I always say it that way is because consciousness created all this. Consciousness put this here. And when you get down to the nitty gritty, this is basically what it comes to. That question that we keep asking ourselves, how did we get here? Who created us? Who is the creator? If you haven't figured it out yet, it's consciousness. And we don't know, is it something more than consciousness? Now, you have to realize this. One, you have consciousness first, then energy. Energy is how consciousness interacts with the material world. It's just that simple. So first you have thought, then energy, then action. So thought or consciousness occurs. This is why I talked about this in the meditation DVD about how a thought occurs. Then energy is produced to the hippocampus, down the choroid plexus, to the fornix, which sends an electrical signal down the spine, which stimulates the sacral nerve, which gives you an erection. So you thinking about sex and all this occurs, but it's the thought first. It's the thought. So it's thought, then energy, and then energy creates atoms, elements. These things create matter and other forms of energy. So when you get down deeply to it, it is consciousness. And as I said before, we got to understand that it's consciousness then energy. So consciousness is, what is it? It is like a nothingness. It is something that just is. And consciousness produces energy. And we know that because of the way we move. Even if you're trying to swim or run or jog, the thought occurs first, then energy, then action. The energy sends the signal down the spine to the parts of the body that needs to move. This happens really fast, so fast that we can't perceive it. We just move. We are unaware of what's taking place. Even as I'm waving my arms now, as fast as I'm doing it, there's something already in my brain. My consciousness is already sending the signal so fast to move, 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 move. And it's happening faster than we can perceive. That's consciousness. That's not energy. Something has to produce this energy. It's not as if it's always this, circulating energy. Consciousness produces it. And this is what we got to understand. This is what everybody is talking about in the ancient world, because it's something that's amazing once you start to understand it. And when you understand how consciousness is creating it all and driving it all, then you know that it is consciousness that is basically creating the physical world. So now understand, if consciousness wanted to experience the physical material reality, it must first transfer itself into something physical. And this is something I'll go into in later videos as well. But, from my research, conscious beings figure out a way to grow in consciousness and energy by transferring their consciousness into something physical. Now, this is what this planet was prepared for. This is why I talked about the planet being prepared to support and sustain physical beings, us. So if you figured out a way to grow in consciousness, to grow in energy by existing in material beings, physical beings, then you must complete that process. You must do that process. Understand, again, we did not evolve here. We wasn't created here on this planet. If we evolved through evolution, like, they say, then we would still see it, as everybody always talks about. If we evolved from, the whole bacteria, cyanobacteria and everything like that through the evolutionary process, this is something that we should still see. It's easy for them to say, well, those primates would extinct, or, you share a common ancestor, but there is, we can't figure it out. We can't find who exactly, where exactly we came from. And this is something you got to really think about. 99% of our DNA locked. You got to think about all these things that don't fit, that don't make sense. And you got to look and see what the truth is. Clearly, we wasn't created here. The components that created us, if we was created here or evolved here, should still exist. But they don't. We should still see this evolutionary process happening. We should see evolution. Now everybody want to say, well, it take millions of years. Well, yeah, millions of years passed. We don't see nothing. We don't see what they're telling us. This is why I put these videos out, so you can understand the process and what's being told. All my videos is always talk about. If you watch, they are linked. You got to understand, I put stuff out for a reason. But think about it. We're not seeing it. So you got to understand that we wasn't created here, and this planet was created to support and sustain us. But there's more to the story, which we'll get into as we go along. Our bodies was created specifically for the purpose of growing in energy and consciousness. And, this is right on par with everything that you see in esoteric circles and occult circles. We were put here to basically grow in energy and consciousness, so that when we do die and ascend, that we are stronger, more powerful for whatever reason. This is right on par with what Star Wars and Dragon Ball Z and everything is talking about. In Star Wars with the Jedi, when they die, they become more powerful, as I talked about. Dragon Ball Z, remember Goku died a few times, but every time he comes back, he's more powerful. He gets stronger each fight. Every time he goes on and wins battles or even loses battles, he gets stronger. And, the ancient Egyptians always talked about there being more after death, much more after death. And when you start paying attention, it's like life begins once you die. It almost seems like, and I believe, I don't like to say believe, but from my research, I always, had this idea that the ancient Egyptians had their DNA completely unlocked, that they had 100% brain power, 100% use of their brain. And whatever happened, whatever war or whatever happened, whatever occurred, caused us to basically only be able to use 10% of our brain and 99% of our DNA to be, locked. And when you understand how significant that is, and how if it's obtaining 100% brain power, as in Lucy gives you all power, and having your DNA unlocked allows you to astral travel, to leave your body and come back, then this is something that the ancient Egyptians was trying to obtain when you really pay attention to what they're talking about. Everything is pointing to this, people. I'm telling you. When you get into the research, when you start looking at this stuff and really paying attention, it's so crazy how many people talked about this stuff, how this stuff is in every single culture. We find a bunch of bullshit in everybody's culture. We all know this. You can look at the little folk tales and fables and spooky stuff, but when you start getting down deep into the nitty gritty, into the occult circles and every single civilization, even in the Africans with the bones in their lips and people who don't speak no language you ever heard that you think is primitive and crazy, it's all the same. It's all about consciousness, energy, death. That this is just, we're here for whatever reason and then we're supposed to leave. This was occurring, as I talked about before. It seems like this is what was happening until whatever broke out, whatever war. And in my second DVD that I put out, I get into this a little bit. So I get into this a lot. As a matter of fact, we have to continue, the story because it's so much more. We have to continue to research because it's a lot more. And a lot of people say, well, you're just wasting your time. You're never going to figure out the answers or whatever like that. And I don't like to be arrogant and say stuff like that, and be like I know everything and I know it all, because I don't. It's stuff that I do not know. I like learning, but I feel like I figured it out. And I'm not going to hold back on that. And as you'll see as we go along with the videos, I feel like I figured it out. I know there's more to the story, but I think I got a big chunk of it, let me say. But it's a lot more in it, because the questions that I have personally, as far as my research, can only be answered. I can't really trust anybody who I think would know to give me the truth, but it probably can only be answered in meditation or death. And this is why, I continue my journey. I keep going forward because I'm close. I feel like I'm close, but I want to get you guys caught up. So this is why I'm putting this out. It's so much more information to go, because as you see this information start to, switch gears. And sometimes it may seem like I'm repeating myself in videos and stuff like that, but you got to understand how one thing that we see can mean 6 things. if you ain't pick up on that already. It's different meanings to certain things in the Bible. It's different meanings to certain things in the occult circles and the whole esoteric world. Different meanings that might throw you off. Saturn has a bunch of meanings. And, this is stuff that you have to all get and put together. And, it'll get you closer to the big picture. But in these next 2 DVDs that I'm putting out, yeah, you're going to get a big chunk of it, basically coming off of the Saturn Satan series and everything else, and getting more towards that last DVD that I'm going to be putting out once I take this trip to Kemet. But, it's a lot. So now when you pay attention, when you look at the fact that, one, we only use 10% of our brain and 99% of our DNA is locked. Now, if it's because having 100% use of your brain gives you all power, or, having your DNA unlocked allows you to astral travel, it can't be a coincidence that these things are locked in us. It's almost as if someone done this to us intentionally. And that's what everything is pointing to. Something happened. It seems as if this was done to us. So if you don't want us to reach a certain level of consciousness or grow in power, these are the things that you would have to lock. And it's almost as if, as I explained before with research, if not this, then why that? If it wasn't this, then why is this stuff locked? Why can't we use, this part of the brain? So you have to understand, it's almost as if someone got amnesia and they know basic stuff, but they forgot the memory of something important. Now, if you don't want them to remember this thing, you would do everything in your power to make sure that they don't remember it, and that's basically what we see as going on. Now, I think from my research, the pharaohs, the Nisut, I think that they had control of the reptilian brain as well as the limbic system. And I'm going to explain later in this video why I think that. Also, I think that, when you pay attention to how the pharaohs are handled, like the pharaohs in the Cairo Museum, they have the laboratory in the Cairo Museum underground, but the pharaohs have their own separate laboratory, separate from the rest of the mummies. So they must believe also was something special about the pharaohs. Now we're going to get into this more in this video as well. So I actually do believe that it's something more to the pharaohs, and I believe they had control of this. And I'm really going to get into what this stuff is about later. But let's go back to Egyptian high alchemy and let's dig more into this. Now, achieving the whole golden light, because understand all of this, everything I talked about so far, trust me, it's all going to tie in later. It's going to get really, really deep. It's all going to come together. So I'm going to break this down. But when it comes to obtaining this, golden light, it's about training, as I talked about before, training of the consciousness, the energy, and, the mind, the body. So, mind, body, energy, basically. It is through the prefrontal cortex that you reach the limbic system or the third eye. So the prefrontal cortex is the higher brain and the reptilian brain is the lower brain. So prefrontal cortex is heaven, the reptilian or, Satan or serpent brain is, your lower self or hell, or as I explained before, hell is earth, as they show you in the movie Constantine. I talked about when he went to hell. Remember, he was on earth. It was car. Ain't no cars and roads and streets supposed to be in hell. He was on earth. It's giving it away. So you have prefrontal cortex, heaven, as I said, reptilian brain, lower self. Remember, we fell in consciousness because of the serpent, because of our lower brain. So you must gain control of heaven and earth in order to get to heaven or get to the golden gates, to get to the golden stairs of God. Notice all those pictures you always see, the golden gates of heaven or the golden stairs that lead, the golden stairways to heaven, so to speak. So it's all about gold. Just like when you look at alchemy, the alchemists back in the medieval times, it was all about gold. Taking base metals, getting gold. It's the same thing. Egyptian high alchemy is about gold, getting the golden glow, the golden light. Listen, it sounds crazy, And this is all real shit right here. This is what everybody has been talking about. But a person that could achieve such a power basically could unite us all, to do the same thing and teach us to do the same thing. So, maybe it's not something that they really want, but this is what everything is alluding to. You have to understand, when you start getting into ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet, and looking at what they were talking about, it wasn't so much about just the gods and worshiping or what have you. These things pertain to the human body, to consciousness, to the universe. So again, it's all about the goal, the prefrontal cortex, the higher brain, getting to the golden stairs that leads to the golden gates of heaven, so to speak. This is what it's about. Gold, the golden light, the golden glow. You win at the Olympics, you get a gold medal. Now, quick side note, why gold? Why gold in the Olympics? Gold is not the number one precious metal. It's rhodium, then platinum, then gold. And another quick side note, you got to understand, one, the top three, these three precious metals, the leading producer of rhodium, platinum, and gold is what? South Africa. In fact, South Africa is the leading producer of 5 of the top 10 precious metals. So that tells you why white people down there doing what they're doing. It's a lot of gold. It's a lot of little minerals and rocks down there, a lot of crystals that we use every day in computers or what have you, that's in South Africa, that are which are the leading producer of these things. So this is one of the reasons why they're down there. But again, gold. It's about that. That's why, you see it so much. Gold is the standard. Gold, gold, gold. So again, prefrontal cortex, the higher brain, the pineal gland. This is the entrance. This is what's going to grow, help you activate that third eye, that pineal gland. So you remember Genesis 32:30, Jacob called the name of the place Pineal, for I have seen God face to face and my life is preserved. The Bible is really clear on that when you get into the whole esoteric meaning, as I talk about in videos. It's about the pineal gland. That is basically God, heaven, everything. All that spooky stuff is talking about. It's talking about the pineal gland. So again, prefrontal cortex, heaven, the reptilian brain, the lower brain is hell. And remember, as I said, we fell because of the reptilian, the serpent, the lower brain. And the lower brain, your reptilian brain, deals with, your negative emotions. It deals with your fears. It deals with doubt, worry. It deals with addiction, things like this. This is all lower brain stuff, devilish, hellish things. This is why, again, when you pay attention to the Bible, why it's telling you certain stuff. Now, again, I always talk about the Bible negatively to people who don't know what it's really about. But to you guys, I tell you the truth. Funny how Jesus said the same thing. He was talking about his disciples who basically understand what's going on. To you, I give you guys the truth, but to them, I give them parables because they need to understand what's going on. I can't tell them flat out. So it's the same thing. So when the Bible is basically talking about, not having money, remember it said it's going to be easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven. It talks about that in Matthew because, it deals with the lower brain, the reptilian brain. You have an attachment when you have money. It's an attachment there. And you're worried about losing things. You're worried about losing people. This is material stuff. And it's trying to get you to understand that this is material. You can create this stuff really when you really get into it. So same thing with Yoda telling Anakin Skywalker to train himself to get rid of everything he feared to lose. The same thing in the Bible when it's talking about, you cannot love this world because this world deals with the material. This is hell. This is the lower brain. This is basically what the world is being run off, materialistic stuff. Higher brain, the ancient world, it was about the higher brain, spirituality. We fell. We are in the lower brain now, dealing with material. So when the Bible was talking about, for any man who loved the world, if any man loved the world, the love of the Father is not in him. The love of God. If you love the world, then you don't love God yourself. Any man that is friends with the world is an enemy of God. Friendship with the world means enmity with God. Plain and simple, this is all the same stuff when you really look at it and you pay attention. It's talking about, addiction. Why create something like a cigarette? Addiction, to get you lower brain thinking, addicted to something. This lower brain is going to keep you lower brain, addicted to money, addicted to everything, material, not spiritual. And this is why I talk about duality and balance, because that's basically the key. Balancing all this stuff to be able to have the kind of lifestyle that you want, but at the same time, not fear losing it.